Finding a great summer camp is something of a leap of faith. You never know what you're going to get and whether your kids will like it. So when you show up at the first day of a summer camp and the director's there to engage you and your kids, it makes a really great first impression. That's what we got at the Mast Tennis Academy summer camp, and the good times kept rolling through the week. So I thought it would be really cool to talk to Coach David Mast about his tennis academy. And Coach Mast, welcome to the Youth Sports Experience.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You know, camps, like I said, are a leap of faith. You know, you don't know whether your kids will like it. And my kids said they had a good time. They said they had fun. And that's a huge tribute to you and your staff and the camp you put together.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You know, I have a secret weapon that I never tell people when I send my kids to camp. They wear those fitness devices,
Right.
you know, on their wrists. So
Nice.
When they come home, I can measure the number of steps they took.
Right.
And
Well,
we
smart.
we were in the half day version from 9 to 12.
Right.
And, you know, one day it rained, so that's a little bit different. But they were getting close to 9,000 steps.
Wow.
You know,
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's
So a full day of camp, that's probably 20,000 steps.
Yeah. You know, that's funny you say that. That's something, I think that is really cool and something that totally off my radar screen. My wife's really into those devices, and I'm more just like, let's just do the sport and maybe figure that stuff out later. So we just do our thing. And I guess, wow, that's incredible. But I think that's good data for sure.
Absolutely. You can put that in your camp flyer.
No, that's great. Yeah. Kids will guarantee to get 10,000 steps if they do half day and double if they're doing full day. I think that's incredible. I think that's very useful to show people that tennis, you know, really can get kids active and moving around a lot more than they really think.
No question. It really compares favorably too to some of the best basketball and soccer camps that I've sent my kids to over the years, where they would come home. It was a full day with, you know, 20,000 steps. And I was like, wow, they were tired, but they said it was a good time. So they were active.
Right.
You know, I've seen other camps with not so many steps, and I know they weren't doing a whole lot. They were either standing in line or doing a lot of sitting around. So
exactly.
That's great. So real quick, how did you get into coaching tennis?
Well, I got into coaching tennis because I played tennis. I wasn't one to read a book and say, hey, look, I'm just going to go teach some tennis, you know, easy money, this type of thing. You know, I got into it because I love tennis. I played tennis. And then I got to a level where I thought, you know, I could teach kids the game just the way that I learned, you know, and I really love the game. And I think besides from just loving tennis and saying, you know, I'm going to teach tennis, you know, you really have to, you know, you have to be a teacher. You have to love kids and want to teach kids and give them that gift. But your question is how I got into it. I would say from playing tennis, from competing in juniors, you know, playing USTA tournaments, and then moving on, playing in college, and then playing after college. And actually, I still compete now in my age groups.
Mm-hmm. What's the hardest thing to teach? My guys say the overhead serve was the hardest thing to learn.
Hardest thing to teach would probably be the volley and serve, especially the serve, because it's a stationary stroke. So you're standing still and you have to throw the ball up and hit it while standing still. And there's a lot of moving parts to the serve. So I would say the serve is the hardest thing to teach.
Okay. Your staff were terrific with the kids.
Oh, thank you.
And most of them, as far as I know, they were high school kids, right?
Yeah, so we had a tier that were graduating from high school and then college. And then, you know, we had 1 or 2 senior staff that have recently graduated college. And then, of course, myself, who I've been out of college a little while.
Right. Me too. So, you know, as staff can make or break a camp. And you did a really nice job of selecting kids. So you don't just take anybody. You picked some people who they were energetic, they were positive with the kids, they connected with them.
Right.
And what I loved is none of them were on their phones.
Yeah, well, that's a battle. I mean, you missed a few that were on their phones. Thank you for that. But picking the staff is probably the most important part of running a successful camp, because really I'm just the facilitator. I'm the go-between. So if you have a dudded camp, and if you have someone that you really shouldn't have hired, which sometimes you make mistakes, it can really be tough on the camp as a whole. So I just try to pick staff members who are good tennis players, but really that's not the prerequisite. Really, it's guys and girls who like to be around kids and who bring in a vibe. I call it a vibe. I mean, like basically a vibe that is upbeat for the camp, something that the kids pick up on, and the kids want to be there if the staff wants to be there, and that they feel like they're engaging and learning at the same time. But I would say, if when I'm hiring people, it's not, first thing is not like, well, let me go get the best tennis player in the world to come teach at camp. I've been down that road before, where we announce, oh, I've just hired the coach of this great college, and he's coming to the Mast Tennis Academy. Well, that may sound great when you're advertising that on the web or wherever, and parents may in fact sign up a couple kids, but it's the end game. They have to be good with kids. They could be the worst. You could lose clients from a so-called great coach. They just have to be good with the kids, no matter what their level is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I have to think that I'm not sure how many years you've been doing the camp, but your camp has evolved over the years. And I found out talking to you that you're doing some camp consulting to help other people run their camps. When you think about the basic points of what makes a camp good, what comes to mind?
Well, lots of things. Staffing, um, a schedule of the day. If you don't have a schedule to use for the kids, they don't know what they're doing next. You could have complete chaos. Safety, a great facility, and ironically enough, food is very important. A great lunch. Kids who stay the full day, they want to eat well and feel comfortable.
Hmm.
I would say those are some, I'm probably leaving out a few things, but those are the main components. And you just want someone who's running the camp to be a servant. I mean, to the kids. I mean, you're it. You have to do everything you can to make families and kids feel comfortable at your camp.
Hmm. Hmm. I thought one of the key points was, the number of steps my kids got told me that they stayed active. They didn't
Right,
spend a lot of time standing in lines. You had
right,
enough courts so that
right,
most of the kids could be on a court and they could be playing. And if you're
right.
not playing, you're really not learning.
Right. You have to hit a lot of balls. You have to do the reps in order to get better. Tennis is one of those things you do have to spend a lot of time out on the courts. Probably this week we're on the courts a little bit, maybe a little bit less, taking more breaks. But when it's that hot, you do have to take the breaks. But the last 2 weeks, the weather was probably the best 2 weeks of weather in Baltimore that I've ever experienced in June, and we took advantage of it, and we kept the kids out, playing a lot.
Yeah, and you coach high school tennis at Calvert Hall High School. I mean, a
Right.
really prestigious, private high school in the Baltimore area. When you're looking for players, are there plenty of players out there to find, or is it hard to find good young tennis players?
Very hard to find. They're not really lining up because you're competing with lacrosse and all the other sports, especially lacrosse. You're competing with these other team sports who they're not really lining up. You have to go find them. And I think, my tennis academy tends to get kids playing the game. That's what I always wanted. And now, coaching high school, maybe I can bear some of those fruits where these kids come up through my program, and then I have a little bit of a streamline into the high school and, into my high school where I'm coaching, and I can get them to play. But it's difficult. It's difficult to get kids. And then sometimes at the higher level, the kids who are really good high school players, they don't want to play for their high school. You got to change the mentality that playing for your high school is a privilege. It's not something to be taken for granted. You can go play on your own anytime you want to, but to play for your high school is an honor. It's a privilege. And that's what I try to preach to my kids.
Yeah, so in basketball, there's AAU basketball, youth basketball, and soccer. There's, plenty of travel teams out there for high schools to to look at. Is there anything like that in tennis? Is there a junior circuit? And I'm guessing there's just not enough kids playing it.
There's USTA and then there's UTR tournaments. So you get a fair amount of kids who are playing, and there's different leagues. So that's not too much of a problem. It's just, again, I think here locally in the Mid-Atlantic, it's a pretty good section for tennis, but you're dealing with the weather too. So we start our practices, let's say, the day after President's Day. So February 16th, we're outside practicing. So that's also kind of a tough sell. It's not like we're in Florida and, it's 80 degrees and, it's a no-brainer to play a spring high school sport.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're in the era of specialization, right? Where it seems like a lot of sports kids are choosing one sport more and more often. Is that the case with tennis players, or are a lot of your kids that are playing for you, are they multi-sport athletes?
Most of them have to decide, I would say, relatively soon before their freshman year. Tennis is not one of those things you can play part-time. I don't care what anyone says. You're either all in or you're playing a different sport. I just don't see kids playing tennis and another sport very at the highest levels and being very successful at both. I don't know other sports. I think I don't know, you've had some multi-sport athletes from time to time. You get like I don't know, maybe soccer and tennis relate to each other because soccer lays the footwork, and then the tennis, soccer's in the fall more of the time, and tennis is in the spring. So that could be doable. But I think trying to play a different sport like a baseball or a basketball or even a football and then trying to play tennis is almost impossible at the higher levels.
Yeah, I have seen some really good basketball players that I've learned that somewhere in their youth they played tennis. And when I look at how they move and how they think on the court, it really doesn't surprise me, because I think tennis is great for kind of like that overall long-term athletic development. It just covers
Right.
so many areas.
Right. Yeah, no, it does. It covers everything: footwork, catching and throwing. You have to have good hands, decision making. You're on your own. So yeah, no, tennis is definitely that's true.
I've come up with my own list. All right, here. So I actually thought about it and I said to myself, I think I would rather have my kids play tennis than baseball, just given the attributes. When you're talking about hand-eye coordination, whereas tennis just involves a lot more movement, change of direction, touch, placing your shots where you want them to go, eyes tracking the ball and predicting the flight path of the ball, tactical thinking. You have to think a shot ahead, paying attention, and I hope that translates to the classroom
Right.
with
Right.
my kids.
Right.
You can't defer to teammates. I mean,
Right.
really, even in doubles, you can't just defer because you don't know,
Right.
where the ball is going. You got to turn your torso to generate some power.
Right.
You got to communicate with your teammate, and then you have that little thing, integrity, whether you call a ball in or out.
Right.
When there's no referee. So,
Right. Right.
um, do you see kids blossom when they get immersed in tennis and just that overall athletic ability?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I do see kids who come in, who, a lot of those attributes that you spoke of, they grab onto those and they really do flourish. I mean, it's a lot quicker process for these kids because, again, when you're playing a team sport, a lot of times you're playing one position. So maybe you're good at that one position, like a first baseman. He's really good at fielding and catching. I used to play first base when I played baseball, and I also pitched, and I was really good at those positions. But if you think about tennis, I mean, you're playing the back court, the front court, you're playing everything. You're managing the clock, you're managing your serve, you're managing the return of serve, decision making. It's off the charts.
Yeah. Can you be a late bloomer in tennis, or is it something you need to start off early?
Both. It just depends on the person. I've seen kids that I've almost given up on occasionally and I probably would never do again. because every kid's different, but I've turned my head at some kids and I see them in a couple of years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is that the same person? So, you can start early and get burnt out, or, sometimes you start early and kids, they make it through. And then you see late bloomers, kids who are 10, 11, 12, 13, even 14, who are late bloomers. I would say myself, I'm probably even a little bit of a late bloomer. I really didn't play great tennis until I was in my mid 20s, late or 30 years old. I played some pretty good tennis.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Where would kids go if they want to get involved in tennis? I mean, I know every local place has their own places, but in general, where do you go?
Well, that's a good point. There's not really, and this is something I've thought about doing. There's not really a rec tennis organization in the country. There's not really, like there's rec baseball, rec football, and all the other sports. They have, rec leagues, and there's not a whole lot of that in tennis. I think if you had more rec grassroots, that could be your first step, and then you could go from there. And now it's basically, you have to take lessons or meet up, with someone like myself or an academy, and then go and then do a week of camp and then meet people, take some lessons and things like that, and then progress to tournaments. But I think if there was a platform where there was a recreational tennis where you catch more kids in that net, so to speak, then I think you would have better American tennis players as a whole.
Is it fair to say that maybe we're suffering a little bit as a country right now compared to the rest of the world?
Oh, for sure. 100%. Most of the reason is everyone's so scared and so insecure about losing kids. So for instance, your kids come to my camp and, oh, Mark Thomas's kids are at my camp. Oh, well, you feel like, they have to stay at my camp, and, oh God, they went to, Susie or Johnny's camp down the street, and oh gosh. But at the end of the day, you got to realize, like, we don't own anyone, and the interest of the kids come first, and that's how they're going to get better. But if we constantly pin each other against one another and we don't do more of a collaboration, in this country, to get kids really truly better and not think about it just in terms of money, we're not going to have any good American tennis players. And the reason why the other countries, smaller countries, poorer countries, have better tennis players, because their model is different. They work more together to produce better players. The system is completely different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think a lot of what you're saying pertains to other sports in this country too.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works with other sports, but I would say this, it's the same system in this country where everybody is just trying to, grab a piece. And, I understand that. I mean, I'm a business owner and I run a tennis program. I enjoy that, but you also, this is one of those things where you have to do a little bit of a collaboration, I think, if you really want to start talking about producing good players.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if people want to find you online, where should they go? You have a website? Are you on social media?
I'm on, every platform. Mast Tennis Academy.com is the best place. MAST Tennis Academy, easy to remember.
Yep.
I'm on, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, everything. You can find me. You'll see all our posts on Instagram about the tennis and pictures we have each week of the kids and how fun tennis can be.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. And most of all, I want to thank you for a great week of tennis for my boys.
Oh, sure. It was our pleasure, honor to have your kids and all the kids coming through the camp. We're grateful.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Coach. And I wish you a great summer.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. We'll see you.
Have a good one.
You too.